We are coming down to the wire in the Central Division. The Wild are on top right now. Will they finish the season in that spot? We'll take a look at what the top three in the division have on their plates the rest of the way. Plus, can Wild players hit stat milestones between now and the end of the year? All that on today's episode of Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you, as always, for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. And make sure to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts so you don't miss out on our newest episodes. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, we dive into the remaining schedule for the top teams in the Central Division. We'll also take a look at if Wild players are close to stat milestones the rest of the way. We'll preview maybe the biggest week of the season as well. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider. Joining us as always, and it is a Victory Micheletti Monday. Alex Micheletti is here. Alex, it wasn't easy against Chicago on Saturday, but the Wild did pick up a win, and due to Dallas losing to Vancouver in regulation and Colorado outlasting Arizona in a shootout, your Minnesota Wild are in first place. So all of the things that have happened so far this season, which has been, it's been a journey, all that, the Wild have found ways to persevere through it. Now they stand alone at the top of the Central Division.
Yeah, it's incredible. How about Ryan Hartman saying no more overtime? We are going to win a game in regulation. That was incredible. And Connor Murphy was he fell over, and that was a debacle. And then Alex Stalock, he kind of just stayed in his net. And Ryan Hartman said after the game that he thought about going high glove, and then decided just to deke him and put the puck around him. So that was obviously the right decision, and thank goodness, they want to finish first if they possibly can, because you want to avoid Colorado at all costs.
Yeah, 100%. And you top that game off with Freddie Gaudreau with the full ice empty netter. Steady Freddie continues to just get it done. One of the players who potentially could hit a stat milestone here. And just looking at the Wild statistics right now, you've got Kirill with 39 goals. There's a chance that if he gets back before the end of the regular season, he can get to 40. But Matt Zuccarello at 22, Joel Eriksson Ek at 23, Matt Boldy at 25. Alex, who has the best chance of getting to that next ladder in terms of goals? Is it Boldy getting to 30? Or is it Zuccarello and Eriksson Ek finding their way to 25?
I think Ek. I just like the way he's been playing. He's been, the second best player on this team overall. I mean, Matt Boldy's obviously picked it up, but without Ek, the way he plays defensively and offensively, this team would be in a lot worse position. He takes on, some of the hardest, guys to play against in the NHL, and he does it with ease. And he hasn't had his other defensive stalwart back there in Jonas Brodin all year. There's been spots where he's been missing, and X had to kind of do it by himself. And so the way that he's he has that role on the power play too, where he's right out front. I think Ek gets there first.
I have a hot take. I think Matt Boldy does get to 30. Now,
okay,
that's a tall order because there are 9 games left in the season. And so Boldy needs 5 goals in 9 games, but he's on his hottest heater of his young NHL career so far with, I think, 6 goals in 7 games since Kirill got hurt, or 6 goals in 8 games. I think it is. So he's certainly capable. But yeah, if I had to pick the player that has the best odds to get to kind of that next tier in terms of goal scoring, I think it is Ek. And it's ironic because you talk about Joel Eriksson Ek. He is not too far off of a career high in goals. Matt Boldy already has established a career high in goals. Freddie Gaudreau, his next goal will be his 15th, which will be a career high. And so even with this lack of goal scoring as a whole, you still have plenty of players that are still finding ways to have either career years or just off of their career pace. And it comes down to a lot of those guys that have just been the steadying presences throughout the course of the season.
They're doing it by committee. They've had to do this. Last year, I think it was just an anomaly, just one of those super crazy scoring years. And now it's nice to see this team. It's a team effort. You see guys like Ryan Reeves scoring. This fourth line that they've had has been absolutely incredible. You look at guys that have overcome so much in their careers. Mason Shaw tearing multiple ACLs and making it to the NHL. These are guys that want to stay in the NHL. They know what it's like in Iowa. Same with Connor Dewar, and they don't want to give up their spot. And this, what's fascinating about this team too, once Gus Nyquist comes back, is who do you take out of the lineup? That's it. Dean's got a really tough task. I'm sure, as we know, Bill Guerin has major influence over the lineup decisions too. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see, come playoff time, who plays or who doesn't play.
Yeah, I don't envy Dean in having to make the decisions because, like you said, that fourth line's playing fantastic. Second line, you're not breaking those guys up. And when Kirill comes back, we've seen the chemistry that him, Hartman, and Zuccarello have together when those three are in the lineup. And so really leaves you with one line to make changes to. And I don't know if I would pull Brandon Duhaime out of the lineup. I mean, you've got some tough choices as to who are going to be the ones that don't play. But you're talking about adding Kirill Kaprizov back into the lineup so somebody obviously is going to sit. And then, like you said with Nyquist, is you're adding a guy who has top 6 potential. So you are winning games right now, and then you're adding pieces to the mix before the postseason starts. Like it truly is just crazy that this team has taken as major of a blow as losing Kirill has been, and has found a way to just keep it going.
And the fact that they're in first place too, we never in our wildest dreams would we think this team was in first place. I remember when we were making predictions, I was bold and said second, but I never thought in a million years that they'd be in first with losing with Kevin's production. And thank goodness for Matt Boldy stepping up here late too. He's been the catalyst of keeping this team in first or trying to keep them there. And, when some guys have been a little bit more quiet, Zuccarello. So hopefully once his best buddy gets back in the lineup, his production starts ramping up again. But the goaltending too, there was obviously some tension with Fleury and Talbot at the end of the last season. And Gus just seems like the calmest guy in the planet. And Fleury, he doesn't. He was voted, the most guy in a locker room guy by all the players in the NHL. So, good chemistry to have those two together. And whoever starts in the playoffs, I think they're in good hands.
That's another decision that I don't envy, because I think there is a particular way that we would all like it to go.
Mm-hmm.
But you got a guy who has started so many playoff games,
multiple cups.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say that I would prefer Fleury over Gustafsson, because I wouldn't. Gustafsson has been the steadying presence the whole season. He's been like this pretty much all year. Fleury he's had some stretches where he hasn't been as good. He's had some stretches where he's been fantastic, but I just would rather have the steady high arc than the kind of highs and lows. But again, you're talking about a guy who is one of the most decorated goalies in NHL history. So we're not gonna talk anymore about that because you got to get there first.
Yep.
The Wild are in, but there is going to be an interesting race down the stretch between those top three teams. So when we continue today's episode, we will look at what the top three teams in the Central have remaining on their plates. And let me tell you, some are more full than others. So we'll take a look at that as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after a word from our sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by a product I use every single day, AG1 by Athletic Greens. Maybe you're like me. You want to be healthy and eat well, but it's always easier said than done. That's no longer the case with AG1. With one delicious scoop of AG1 in a glass of water each day, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food-sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. It can be hard and expensive to keep track of multiple different supplements and vitamins, not to mention how hard it can be on your stomach. AG1 costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Continuing today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, make sure you check out the Locked on NHL podcast to get the full lowdown on the playoff push for all of the teams in the East and the West. Locked on NHL is available on all of your favorite podcast platforms and YouTube, absolutely free. Continuing to break things down with Alex Micheletti here on a Victory Micheletti Monday. All right, Alex, let's look at what we've got for the big three, because Winnipeg's not catching anybody, I don't think. They may not even make it because Nashville just continues to have those 3 games in hand. I don't know when they're going to get those made up or in, but they've got 3 games in hand, and they're like 5 points back, which is insane.
And I think we were the last episode, we were wondering where those games are coming from. And do you remember earlier this season, they had a water main pipeline break? That is why they're behind everybody else. I was trying, because I had to do some research after, and I was like, what is going on with the Nashville Predators? And that's it. The crazy thing with them too is they traded everybody or that they could, and now the guys that are still there, some of the vets that are still there, are getting injured. Roman Josi is still out, and without him, it's hideous back there on defense. And then Matt Duchene got hurt last night in their most recent game, so he's out multiple weeks. So I mean, I think that's the rest of the regular season, and so if they can pull this off with Minnesota's own Tommy Novak and the remnants of what's left, Cody Glass, it's hard to name guys that are still forwards on that team. And so, yeah, we'll see if they do. Shame on the Winnipeg Jets for letting them to creep back in.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm reacting because the St. Louis Blues just scored again at 7-6.
Of course they did.
12 seconds left in that game. So Binnington gave up a couple. He didn't even start. Gave up a couple things you like to see. Schedule remaining for the top 3. We'll start with the Dallas Stars, who have 3 games on the road to start off their final 9. At Chicago, at Arizona, at Colorado. Then they host Nashville, Philadelphia, and Vegas before at Detroit, at St. Louis. And then as part of those home and homes that we love so much, they finish the regular season hosting St. Louis on the 13th of April. So that's the Stars. The Avalanche have the following. They have a game in hand as well. They are at Anaheim tonight. Then they host the Wild on Wednesday. They host the Stars on Saturday. They play 2 in a row at San Jose, Tuesday and Thursday of next week. Then they're at the Kings, at the Ducks. They host Edmonton and Winnipeg, and they finish with Nashville. So that's the Avalanche. And then for the Wild, host Seattle tonight. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Then they're at Colorado, at Vegas on Saturday, then hosting Vegas on the 3rd, at Pittsburgh on Thursday the 6th. Then they host St. Louis, at Chicago, host Winnipeg, and they finish at Nashville on the 13th to finish the season. Who's got the easiest road?
It pains me to say it, but I think the Colorado Avalanche do. Just with some of those diseased teams that they're playing multiple times. San Jose has completely given up.
Yeah.
The Ducks, watching them on Saturday, that was unbelievable. I don't know what is going on there, but they gave up a ton of goals to St. Louis. What was it, 6, right? If you see their schedule right there. Yeah, just hideous amounts of goals. They scored quite a bit too, but that game was just odd to begin with. And I just think Colorado has the easiest one, unfortunately.
Yeah, but you look at it too with Dallas, and you say, well, they start off with Chicago and Arizona, so that's easy for them too, right?
Arizona's been taking it to everybody. They should have beat Edmonton the other night. They took Colorado to again. They played a tough one today against them.
Yeah, that shootout went 7 rounds?
Yeah, it took Val Nichushkin to finally score. Yeah, 7 and. We have to praise Clayton Keller too, the way he's playing down the stretch here. 12-game point streak. He and Nick Schmaltz have just been on fire for that team.
They are willing the Coyotes out of Connor Bedard, and Dallas also lost to Vancouver, who
Vancouver doesn't lose now. They beat up on Chicago. Well, everybody's beating up on Chicago, but yeah, the coaching change has worked out really well with Rick Tocchet.
Yeah, Tocchet has got them playing really, really well. So we should be thankful that Vancouver's not on the schedule the rest of the way. And it is interesting that the Wild do have an opportunity here to help assert some of that final schedule by playing the Avalanche, by playing Vegas. And this is where them playing in as many overtime games as they've had comes into play, because you have a chance maybe to get a game to overtime that you don't necessarily win, just to pick up a point. And so that 3-game stretch, as we'll talk about here in a second, getting those games to OT as opposed to losing in regulation is the difference between first or just win it. I mean, you just win them, just win the games. That's the difference between first and going into second or third.
Yeah, it's huge. As we know, the NHL playoff format, I don't think anybody likes except for Gary Bettman. And you just can't make it up. And of course, we know that they would fare so much better, if they finish in the first place and get to play Seattle.
Yeah,
Seattle, they've made tremendous strides, but I don't trust Grubauer or Martin or the skeletal remains of Martin Jones. He had a good start to the year, but he's been horrendous, in the second half here, and that's why they've barely been playing him. And Grubauer, who knows? He's an absolute wild card, and I would take the chances of the Wild getting to the second round against Seattle compared to Colorado. So shoot for the first, no matter what.
Shoot for the top spot. I'm fully with you there, and I don't know who Gary is asking, because we're polling people and we're finding that the playoff format is very popular among fans. It's like,
you want to tell that to Toronto and Tampa Bay fans who have to play each other again in the first round? Two like, amazing teams.
Who are you asking? Are you asking the people in the photo behind? Oh wait, there's nobody in it. Like, what are we doing?
The same thing with the Dasher boards too. Remember that earlier this season? They said, we pulled, and everybody loves the interactive boards or ads on the boards. Crazy.
Real. So that's I could go into a whole other rant on the playoff format, so we're just going to leave that as is. But you mentioned Seattle. They are in town tonight, and so we'll take a look at that game. We'll talk a little bit about Philip Grubauer and his propensity to allow goals as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? Well, you need to give Built Bar a try. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. And they come in some unbelievable flavors too, like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I don't know how Built Bar continues to get it done, but these are their healthiest Built Bars yet. They contain just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and are packed with a whopping 17 grams of protein. Best of all is you no longer need to wait for your delivery to arrive before you can enjoy the taste of Built Bar. Now you can head to your local Walmart or Sam's Club to pick up a box today. If you don't have one handy, you can still head to Built.com, and whichever way you choose, make sure that you choose Built Bar today. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, thanks for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, Locked On NHL is here to guide you through the final couple of weeks of the regular season by talking to our local Locked On experts. Locked On NHL is free and available wherever you listen to your podcasts. The Seattle Kraken are in town tonight, and for the Minnesota Wild, an opportunity for them to add to what has been it's been a great stretch of hockey. 14-1-4 in their last 19 games. Seattle comes in 40-24 and I believe 40-24-8. The Wild struggled against Seattle earlier in the season, but the Wild are playing much better hockey here as of now. If you can slow down the top options that the Kraken possess on offense, there should be some opportunities to score goals against probably Philip Grubauer, maybe Martin Jones. Yeah, it's been a wild ride for those two guys as both of them come in with a save percentage under 90.
It's insane. It's insane. That's one team that I thought was going to add a goaltender at the deadline because, they look like they're going to make the playoffs, which is a pretty great feat for, they've only been in the NHL. This is their second season. So kudos to them and Ron Francis for making some key acquisitions in the past summer.
Not everybody's going to be a Vegas and just go every year.
Right. Yeah. It's the NHL. It's the best league in the world for a reason. The one guy that I've been super impressed by, and it's just amazing that he was available when they were picking players, is Jared McCann. He's having an unbelievable season. Yeah. And another guy on their back end, Vince Dunn, is having an incredible season too, which St. Louis desperately misses a guy like that for sure.
Yeah, they have not really had anything close to good D in St. Louis this year. So they definitely miss him. And, of course, our guy Carson Soucy, Dr. Seuss, which I think is one of the greatest nicknames in the NHL, hands down. You got Matty Beniers, who's got 20 goals on the season. So he is continuing to be a strong contributor to that mix. But it's a Seattle team that I think plays a style similar to what the Wild do. They rely on kind of keeping things tight. They do have some guys that can put the puck in the net, much like the Wild. And so I think this is a game where if the Wild can just continue to get some burst offensively, they should be able to take care of business.
You have to be careful. They played Nashville, and it was probably one of Nashville's biggest games of the season, and they exploded with goals. I think that one finished 7-2, right?
Yep.
And so, but Nashville's, like I said, is such a weird team right now. They look like world beaters, and then they give up 7 goals. They've done that twice now in the past couple of games. When they played the Rangers, that was just a hideous game for them. But yeah, these names that we mentioned, they have some really underrated forwards too that don't get talked a lot about, and they were kind of misfit toys or forwards that got cast off by teams. Jordan Eberle, who's been in the league forever, Jaden Schwartz, who won a cup with St. Louis too. So they do have some guys that have been in this league for a while, and so they're fighting for a playoff spot. The Wild have a little bit better because they're not in the wild card spot, but Seattle is literally trying to fend off Nashville, Calgary, and Winnipeg they're fighting with too. So
clinging for dear life.
Poor Connor Hellebuck. If he could get more help, that would be for his sake.
Any amount of help would be just great.
Yeah, it's fascinating watching some of those teams, especially Calgary too. They're they're trying to make the playoffs, but it also seems like they hate their coach, and so that I can't get enough of the Calgary drama for sure.
It's a disaster. And you and I were chatting over the weekend, like it's got to be the end of the line for Sutter, you would think.
Yeah, how could it not? When you got some of these young guys that just are not getting along with them, and then you have some of the stars too, and their agents having to make remarks on Twitter. That's never Alan Walsh. That's never a good thing when Huberdeau is not going to be even close to the point totals that he had with Florida. It's a nightmare. And we saw, the other night when they had the net empty and Huberdeau wasn't even on the ice. So it's like there was drama with that with some insiders. Yeah, it's crazy.
Unreal. After Monday, after tonight, the Wild play the Avs on the road on Wednesday. Colorado is
biggest game of the season.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, because it's a Colorado team that I think the last time the Wild played them, they outshot them like 42-18 and still ended up losing. So that, honestly, that will determine where in relation to each other the Wild and Avalanche fall. If the Wild can pick up that win, then they've got that in their back pocket over the Avs. And honestly, it's one of those where it kind of is it's a measuring stick game for, at this point in the season, do you stack up against those teams that you're fighting with at the top of the division, going into their barn and coming away with the win? That would be the one where people would say, yes, they do.
Yeah, you make people think you're real, and it's going out and winning road games because you're going to have to do that in the playoffs. And if they do match up with this team in the playoffs, here's a preview for them this week. So get excited, Wild fans. It's another late game. And so get your coffee, get your Mountain Dew. Yeah, get ready for that late one. watching this Colorado team, if you can keep it 5-on-5, you can stay with them. When they get on the power play, it's lights out, it seems like, just because Makar has just been just an absolute animal back there on the back end, and McKinnon and Rantanen. It's just the names are endless when it comes to the special teams for them.
You need to have both hands, so to speak, in that fight against the Colorado Avalanche. You follow that up with another 9 o'clock, this time, though, against a West Coast team in the Vegas Golden Knights. And another team that a couple weeks ago, the Wild came up in the wrong end of a game against Vegas. And so they're out for some retribution there. And again, another measuring stick game for the team that is currently the top overall seed in the Western Conference playoffs.
They are one of the most surprising stories of the season. I just thought once Leonard went out for the year, once we knew that he was out for the year, that they were going to struggle. And they've just been rotating goalies left and right and somehow managing to still win games. It's just absolutely insane. They acquired Jonathan Quick, and Logan Thompson's been hurt, and so it's just a who's who of guys that's been in net there. And Jack Eichel's been really good for them lately. They beat Edmonton in Edmonton the other night. That was a huge win for them because Edmonton's just been playing phenomenal hockey, and they have some stalwarts back there on the back end, and Shea Theodore and Alex Pietrangelo and Alec Martinez, and so they have some vets that have played a ton of big time hockey, and those that veteran core that they have is keeping them in it. And so yeah, it's going to be a tough one. That game against Vegas was kind of a turning point in the Wild season, because after that, there was a couple more losses, but then they went on that 14-point streak that they had. And so it's a team, like you said, that they want revenge against, and I think they're playing so much better than the last time they played them too. So it should be a lot more even.
Just don't let Phil the Thrill score in this one. I believe he scored in the game against the Wild, back at Xcel Energy Center. So some, as we like to call them, some big boy games this week for the Minnesota Wild. But if they've proved anything over the last ever, is that as many times as we see the kind of play down to your competition games, we see a lot of get up for a high quality opponent too. So hopefully that's the recipe here this week.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, even though some of these teams are in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes, the players don't seem to be tanking. It's the GMs, but some of these guys are playing for contracts too. And so you see a team like Arizona and you think it's going to be an easy win, and then you go into that Mullet Arena and things change very quickly. So yeah. You got to watch out for those teams, like we always talk about. You give a team some life or hope, and they smell blood in the water, and they rattle off a couple goals, and then they somehow pull off a win, and you're like, I just spent 2 hours and I can't believe the Wild lost this team. So you can't. Points are at a premium, as we know. So
it's like
don't take anybody easy.
It's like Shooter McGavin having the lead through 17 holes, because Happy Gilmore is rattled because he got hit by the Volkswagen, and all of a sudden then on 18, the TV tower collapses and Gilmore makes a putt. You got to have that thing in the bag from hole 1 to hole 18, all 60 minutes, whichever sports analogy you want to use. So we'll see. Big week, and we will have you covered every step of the way here on Locked On Wild. So take this, if you haven't already, to subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast platforms. Follow us on social media so you don't miss out on any of the push to the playoffs. We've got some special content coming as well. So make sure to keep an eye on everything at Locked On Wild as you follow along with the Minnesota Wild throughout the rest of the season. We've got new episodes every Monday through Friday, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.